Flight 522 Helios. The incident involving the notorious Flight 522 of the Cypriot company Helios remains one of the most shocking and distressing aviation disasters of the 21st century. To this day, it is impossible to explain how such a tragedy occurred on a flight that by all parameters should have been flawless. The Boeing 737 was en route from Larnaca to Prague, but ended up crashing in the mountains near the settlement of Grammatiko in Greece. Just 5 minutes into the flight, a certain warning signal sounded in the cockpit. But unfortunately, the sound was identical to the takeoff configuration signal and was ignored by the crew, who continued to ascend. Once the aircraft reached an altitude of 5,500 meters, oxygen masks deployed in the cabin, and the last attempts to communicate with the pilots were futile due to the onset of hypoxia. At an altitude of 10,000 meters, they were severely lacking oxygen. The plane was on autopilot, and everyone on board, including the crew, fell into a deep unconsciousness. This silent flight resembled a ghostly phenomenon. All instruments were operational, lights were on in the cabin, but there was no movement. People fell asleep within seconds as if under a spell. 2 Greek F-16 fighter jets were scrambled to intercept the flight. Upon approaching, they discovered that the captain's seat was empty, and the co-pilot had slumped over the controls. However, they noticed a steward entering the cockpit who had managed to use an oxygen cylinder, but the flight was already doomed. The fuel had run out, and the plane was steadily losing altitude, gliding in the sky. The only heroic action the steward could take was to steer the plane away from populated areas. Gliding without fuel inevitably led to the crash. The aircraft hit the mountains, briefly bounced a few meters before impact, and ultimately crashed into the mountainside, breaking into small pieces. None of the 121 passengers and crew members survived. This dreadful crash led the airline to bankruptcy and remains one of the worst tragedies in history.